Just before we get started, did you know that I have a podcast? It's called The Brain Food Show. It covers similar topics to what we do here at Today I Found Out, but in a longer form. It's a more podcasty format. I co-host it with Dave, and it's a lot of fun. It runs for about an hour, so it's a little bit more of a commitment than a video like this, but if you enjoy this, you might just like it. You can get it on all good podcast platforms just by searching Brain Food one word, or follow the link below, and let's get into it. For many imbibing aficionados, tastes like warm piss is perhaps one of the most withering insults that you can hurl in the general direction of a given beer. Generally, I just prefer to stick with, it's a bit isn't it? While you wouldn't begrudge a member of the public making such a claim about a particular beer, you'd think brewers themselves would have just a little bit more decorum. Something nobody apparently told a certain Heineken distributor in the 1980s when they were able to convince the general public that Corona literally contained human urine. The origins of this sordid tale of corporate shenanigans can be traced back to 1979 and the American debut of Corona. Described officially as pale lager, the urine-colored Mexican beer is the flagship product of Mexican brewer Grupo Modelo and has a respectable share of the beer market in most countries where it is sold. Upon its debut in America, the beer was a hit, quickly becoming one of the most well-known and in-demand imported beers in the entire country. In particular, Corona was noted as being especially popular with young urban professionals drawn to the surfer aesthetic the company had cultivated in its advertising. Ah, vanity. According to industry experts, by 1986, Corona had captured about 0.5% of the entire American beer market. This might not sound like a lot, but it represented sales to the tune of 13 million cases of beer annually, which, after adjusting for inflation for the cost of each case, would be, in today's dollars, well over $300 million in gross revenue. These sales numbers also made the zesty Mexican beer the second most popular imported beer in the United States, behind Dutch beer Heineken. And all of this is really making me want a Corona, which I generally view as a fairly average beer. This all brings us, average at best. This all brings us to 1986, when Corona executives noticed that sales of the beer had begun to stall across the United States for no readily apparent reason. In fact, in some regions, sales dropped by as much as 80%, while oddly, in others, nothing much changed at all in the figures. Confused, Corona reached out to their suppliers in regions of the US where sales were stalling and found that not only was the beer not selling as well when it was stocked, but some stores had actually stopped stocking it entirely. Corona then did a bit of sleuthing around and discovered that there was a frankly bizarre rumor being spread in bars across the United States that Mexican workers at the main Corona brewery frequently urinated in the vats that were used to ferment the beer. People believed this? It's a giant company. While this might seem far-fetched, it is noteworthy that the act of peeing in beer to make for a more robust flavor was actually historically a thing, with the practice being called lating. In fact, in 1742, London and country brewer lamented this, stating, "Putting chamberlain or human urine into pale or amber towpenny malt drink is nasty, horrid, and a detestable piece of cunning and knavery." Nevertheless, there are many references to such a thing happening from this era, as well as many more references of rumors of such, whether true or not. In many of these cases, though, it is not clear. But the point is, people have been accusing beer makers of adding urine to their brew, seemingly as long as humans have been making beer. Wow. Thus, it's no surprise that at some point someone got the bright idea to insinuate that Corona, a pale yellow beer sold in clear bottles, also contained urine. And it's further perhaps not surprising that people actually believed it, given attitudes at the time towards Mexican manufacturing of just about anything. Also, if your pee is the color of Corona, you need to drink more fluids, folks. This all left Corona not medical advice, not a doctor, but it is really yellow. This all left Corona the rather bizarre predicament of needing to get the word out that they did not actually allow anyone to pee in their beer, spending about $500,000, which is about $1.1 million today, on ads informing the public of this, while executives appeared on dozens of talk shows to reiterate the same points. No, we promise our beer does not contain urine. No urine, the Mexicans are not peeing in it. Not without risk, the company was well aware that by specifically denying that they put urine in their beer, this may actually have resulted in the rumor just getting spread even further. Nevertheless, as one Corona distributor executive, Michael Mazzoni, noted, "We recognize there's an element of risk in what we've done, but we thought it was necessary to have the truth out there." While they were doing this, a Chicago-based distributor of the beer, Barton Beers Limited, who the aforementioned Michael Mazzoni worked for, decided to play detective and see if they could find out where the rumors had begun. They eventually traced it back to Reno, Nevada as the jumping-off point, and when investigating further, they found that it appeared that employees of a rival distributor called Lucen Sons Inc., who primarily imported the beer Heineken, were the ones who initially spread the idea. Lucen Sons quickly found themselves staring down a rather sizable lawsuit, but ultimately paid a settlement out of court and were made to give a public statement saying that Corona wasn't actually filled with piss. Bonus fact! Speaking of legal action and alcohol, attorneys, and particularly high-priced litigators, are not known for being nice or even polite in their interactions with those on the opposite side of the table of their clients. Something we here at Today Found Out can attest to from several such experiences over the years, both from attorneys unhappy with something we said about their rather famous client, to a certain law firm who is well known for what is tantamount to legal extortion via broadly sent threatening messages to sue if a certain amount isn't paid, where they accuse you of using a stock image which you definitely paid for. Generally, the amount requested here is set to be significantly less than it would take to defend the case in court, or sometimes even just have a lawyer respond to the threat, thus attempting to incentivize their marks to pay up instead of getting a judge to tell said firm to go f themselves. This is something they do en masse to literally hundreds of thousands of online creators who use their clients' images, whether legally or not, with said firm paid approximately half of whatever revenue they can drum up in this way from their mostly copyright troll clients who have simply found this a better way to make money than, normal sales. It's a bit of a hazard of the industry. Thus, as we can attest, the stereotype for many a litigator is of a profession filled with aggressive and sometimes even rather nasty individuals who will stop at nothing to see their clients prevail. I mean, it is their job after all. Given this tense environment, it is noteworthy when an attorney takes a deep breath, considers the actual intent of the underlying act and its effect on their client, and takes a more reasoned approach. And this is where the scholars and gentlemen and women who make up Jack Daniel's extremely refreshing legal team enter the picture. Exhibit A. In 2012, Louisville, Kentucky author Patrick Wensink published Broken Piano for President, a book which bore a cover that bears a striking resemblance to the Jack Daniel's label, the latter of which is protected by trademark. Although a trademark may seem like a small thing to get worked up about, consider that Jack Daniel's brand alone was valued in excess of $5 billion in 2015, and a trademark undefended could well soon end up not a trademark at all. So when someone infringes on its trademark, clearly the company has a keen interest to protect their rights to it. And yet, when it came time to tell Mr. Wensink to cease and desist, Jack Daniel's attorney, Christy Sussman, took a decidedly different approach than most of her compatriots. After introductions, beginning the meat of the letter with, "We are certainly flattered by your affection for the brand," Ms. Sussman then politely outlined the company's position. "We also have to be diligent to ensure that the Jack Daniel's trademarks are used correctly, and if we allow uses like this one, we run the very real risk that our trademark will be weakened." Displaying a remarkable degree of tact and a gift for persuasion, Ms. Sussman continued, "As a fan of the brand, I'm sure that is not something you intended or would want to see happen." Ending as reasonably as she began, Ms. Sussman offered Mr. Wensink a couple of options for rectifying the problem, noting, "Because you are a Louisville neighbor and a fan of the brand, we simply request that you change the cover design when the book is reprinted. If you would be willing to change the design sooner than that, we would be willing to contribute a reasonable amount towards the cost of doing so." In a subsequent interview, Jack Daniel's senior trademark counsel, David Gooder, explained their approach with Mr. Wensink. "We thought, is the author really trying to take advantage of Jack Daniel's to make money? Probably not. We've used this general approach when we see a situation that warrants our response. Whenever we've taken this tone, we almost always get a very favorable reaction back. It solves the problem faster. These are like the nicest lawyers ever. As to whether they're always so polite, he responded, "We don't always send letters like this. We get so many infringement situations a year and we look at each of them separately. We don't have a standard approach to them, we just do what we think is most fair." He also noted that they are occasionally forced to escalate matters to a more typical cease and desist verbiage. You have to be prepared to ramp things up if the subjects ignore you, but our first approach, in most cases, is a fairly polite letter. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below and do not forget to subscribe. Do not forget to check out that podcast, which I will link to below. And thank you for watching.